fortunately, and I'm going to, okay, so fortunately, this information is covered in those videos in Unit 0 as well. And so I'll just, I will get my muscle memory back and start, starting the recording once everybody is assembled. So then the classroom recordings, there's a captured classroom recordings page that you'll be able to click on. And as we have new classroom recordings, they'll just accumulate there. And so you'll be able to go back and review any of the recordings for this semester. And they've actually got links where you can actually review recordings, not only from this semester, but past semesters as well, in case that might be useful. And then we break into the actual units where we, every lecture, so all the lecture materials, any slides that I have, any optional readings that I think might be interesting for those of you that would like to read more, and so on are in here, as well as the lab materials too. The assignments that are incorporated or that are related to these units are also all in here. So you can usually find everything that you need inside these units. If you are looking for, say, a particular lab, you can find it within the unit, but I've also created at the very bottom here a labs unit. So there's a lectures unit, which has just all of the in-class lectures, the Tuesday, Thursday lectures, and then the labs. They're all embedded in here as well. And so they're not only in the units, but they're also broken out. And so I know it's a lot of units, but it's meant there to be flexible and for how you find information. And you can always minimize these things just by clicking these things away. And so that's how the course is organized on Canvas. And you can see that your first responsibility will be to get these Unit 0 stuff done, and then we'll talk about the rest moving forward here as I'll go into some slides. All right, so that's Canvas. Great to see that everybody got connected onto Zoom. So I'll get rid of that and go back here. All right, so I want to pause here. So before I go into the basic outline of the course, in a little bit more detail, describe what's going to go on, how the assignments are set up, how you're evaluated. Are there any questions or comments or concerns so far, just based on this Canvas stuff and just getting connected? I hope everybody had an okay summer. A lot of times when I ask a question, I will talk over some of the silence just to fill. You don't have to wait for me to stop talking. I'm just kind of filling dead air. There's a study that said something like that students need about 30 seconds to come up with a question if they have one, and then have the confidence to assert it. So I usually try to use up about 30 seconds. All right, great. Okay, so let's get on with things. Like I said, this won't take the whole time. Remember to check the syllabus online. All of the course policies in their updated form in extreme detail are given on the course syllabus that is online, and that's linked from Canvas, as I already mentioned. The main places to look on Canvas, as I already mentioned, look under modules. There's a course information module, final project information. We've got the units as well as the lectures and labs broken out. There's exam preparation on there. So not only will you find a course that has or a unit for the midterm and for the final exam, underneath those you'll find review lectures that we'll go over, and then there'll even be some study materials like some past exams that you can study from. So all of that is already up there, and once you unlock Unit 0, you should be able to start accessing that. There'll be a couple of assignments and things that still need some updating for this semester that may take me a few days to get posted. And then I'll also have to make sure that things that you're not supposed to see yet are not accidentally posted ahead of time. But in the very short term, once I've dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's, then even all that exam material will be available well in advance. Your grades, again, and then the syllabus are all available there on Canvas. I'm sure 4th level class, most of you are familiar with Canvas, so should be old hat. All right, so the structure of this is we have these two 75-minute lectures that this semester are going to be delivered ASU Sync for those of you who want to be remote but synchronous. They also will be recorded and posted after the lecture, so you'll be able to watch those afterwards. And then we are working on getting a student support to be able to open up a room so that those of you who want to attend a room will be able to go into a room, keeps physically distanced and participate almost like an ASU Sync auditorium or theater or something like that. So at least until October, I have to deliver from remote, but we can hopefully then get the in-person working for those of you that would prefer to have a space on campus that in the classroom to deliver the material. But keep in mind that a lot of, if I ever, have you do breakout rooms to do, sharing with your neighbors and things like that, that tends to be a little bit easier to do if you are connected to Zoom. So, it might even be advantageous for those who come to a classroom to consider, if you have a laptop available, maybe bringing a laptop and some headphones, or just bringing a laptop and turning the audio off, so you can still participate in the chat, because maybe you would prefer to participate that way than asking a question a more traditional way. So just something to think about. We all have to kind of get used to this new way of thinking, or new way of doing things. There is a lab every week, roughly every week. It's scheduled for Wednesdays. I have put all of the lab materials online. So even before we flipped to sync, we've tried to make the labs as convenient as people to do from remote on their own pace. So I can tell you, the last time I taught 475, that we actually had very few people come to the in-person lab because so many of them just watched the lab video or looked at the lab materials and completed the lab separately, almost like an extra homework assignment or something along those lines. But the lab TA, Shin-Su, has said that he will make himself available during the lab period time, so that if you want to attempt the lab ahead of time and have questions answered, you can have your questions answered by him. Or if you just want to do the whole lab experience, from within the lab classroom, where the lab computers have definitely got all the software you need, then that's something that you'll be able to do as well, just maintaining the safe physical distance between each other and with the TA. So that is a resource that will be available. If you have questions, email is the preferred way to contact us. Of course, there are other ways you can contact us. There's discussions and sending mail through Canvas. Also have made a Slack available for this course, and we'll try to incorporate those in different ways. But the best way to get, if you have a specific issue or a specific question for an instructor like me or for a TA, then the best way is to send an email. But when you send an email, try to put this 475, IEE 475 in the subject. Otherwise, we get a lot of email, from different classes and about research and about some other things. And I want to make sure that I catch your email so I can get back to you relatively quickly. So I do that by looking for that in the subject. And then also, it's really very helpful for you to give me a quick summary of what you're emailing me about. So it again helps me triage these things so I can get back to you in an appropriate time. All right. Lab-related emails. So if you do have questions about the lab, any questions you send to me about the lab or about lab grading, for example, I will then contact the TA to get clarification. So it's always best to send any questions about the lab either to the TA or to the TA CC'd to me. And then the TA might be able to get back to you immediately, or he can confer with me. But lab-related stuff should always have the TA looped in on it. And so don't send directly to me about the lab stuff. Send to the TA. You can carbon copy me if you would like. If you send directly to me, I'll probably have to send it to him, and there'll be another hop in there anyway, so might as well just go straight to him. All right, so what the heck are we going to be doing this semester? So, well, let me, are there any questions about the basic course structure? I will get into, the test structure, the homework structure, how things are weighted. That's all coming. But are there any questions about this, about the attendance stuff? I didn't mention it, but I meant to, and I have a sort of a sync specific lecture that maybe I don't need to get to because I'll cover it all here. But I'm not requiring you to use any particular modality. I'm not telling everyone that they have to come to class, for example. If you would like to use ASU Sync to connect remotely like this, go for it. You don't have to get permission from me. If you would prefer to rather wait for lectures to get posted online and view them that way, that's fine too. You don't have to get permission from me. There is an attendance exercise that we associate with lectures that you will be able to complete even asynchronously. There will be a time window that you'll be able to complete it. And so you don't lose out by attending asynchronously if that's better for you, especially for those of you in a different time zone. So there are benefits, I think, to synchronous. You can raise questions a little more easily, but I'm not forcing anyone to do synchronous or I'm allowing anyone to do asynchronous. You don't need to get permission from me. So any questions or concerns?
I have a question.
Yes.
For today, if we haven't completed the Unit 0 unlock quizzes, are we able to participate in the attendance thing for today?
Oh, I won't have, if I had an attendance thing today, then yes, because the way I do attendance, and I'll show that, is I use a Google form. And so it's not connected to Canvas. And then I pull data from that Google form into Canvas through a backend. And so regardless of the Canvas locked, then you could, but in that hypothetical universe. But in this universe, I actually am not going to take attendance for today. The Unit 0 exercises kind of count as your attendance for today.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And just to clarify, the reason I do this Unit 0 thing, normally I get a lot of emails from students this week that say, I'm not going to be able to come to class, I'm traveling, I'm helping my brother move, these sorts of things. I mean, I understand it's weird starting a semester on a Thursday. So rather than starting like important course material or risking people miss important course policies, I just put everything online asynchronously. And then I tell people that I'll see you for the first time on Tuesday of next week. I'm only holding a synchronous class this week because it's so weird of a semester. And so I've got all the asynchronous stuff that I normally do. And then I'm just having this here with you so that I can answer any questions that might relate to the weird situation that we're in. Okay. Any other questions? All right, great. So what do we do in this semester? Well, so the objective is to get you to be able to, say, identify, model, and analyze stochastic systems with a computer simulation framework. Now, these words, stochastic, system, simulation, have definitions that you'll actually learn in this class. And so, or we'll shore up definitions that you may have learned in other classes in this class. And so even by the end of next week, hopefully you'll have a better idea of just exactly what we mean by that. But if I were to kind of break that down, the stuff you're going to be doing this semester is learning how to use computer simulation to make decisions that would be relevant in operations research and industrial engineering. And this is kind of what kind of broken down here in the official course objectives. In order to use the computer simulation methodologies that we primarily use in this course, discrete event system simulation, you will have to build probabilistic models of real world behavior. And so that's going to use some of the probability theory that like you learned back in 380 and 385. And we're going to build models of the real world using probability. And then we're going to learn how to turn those probabilistic models into programming language. And from that, we'll be able to generate simulations that act like a real world that is consistent with those probability models that you just built. So, if you know that if you know that people arrive at a classroom according to some probabilistic distribution of inter-arrival times, we will learn how to model those inter-arrival times. And then we'll learn how to generate a simulation of people arriving to a classroom, such that the simulated people arrive in a way that looks realistic because it has the same sort of random distribution. And then we'll be able to use those simulations then to the first thing we'll have to do is verify what the verifier simulations work and then validate that our simulations actually look like the real world. And then we'll be able to take those simulations and then do operations research on the sims. So we'll be able to say, what if I change this thing in the hypothetical world? What if I change this thing in the hypothetical world? And then compare things. So that's all that I'm kind of sort of saying here in the course objectives. So that's what we hope that you'll get out of this. What do we sort of assess? Well, so the variety of assessments throughout the semester are going to try to assess how well you can identify systems appropriate for analysis via simulation. You know, simulation isn't all of operations research. There are other ways to make decisions. And so you need to be able to identify which ones are best for simulation. How to build a sim in a high level language. We'll talk a lot about this language arena. There's we'll also talk about spreadsheets, you know, actually being able to simulate stochastic systems in a spreadsheet. We'll talk about agent-based modeling a little bit in a language called NetLogo. So we'll talk about a number of different platforms, and we'll sort of test to make sure that you're able to take a theoretical simulation model and put it into a concrete, I guess it's not theoretical, but an abstract simulation model and put it into a concrete implementation. There's going to be all this, we're going to talk a lot about something called input modeling, which we'll define better next week. But basically, I mentioned people can arrive to a class, and they arrive with certain interarrival times in between them. They're spaced out in time. And we have to sort of know something about what type of data do we need in order to best be able to represent those interarrival times coming into the simulation. And then I mentioned before, your sims and the real world data are going to have variance. You're basically going to generate data with a lot of randomness, and we're going to need to figure out how to use statistical tests in order to make conclusions from that. And then after all of that, we put all that together and we have to communicate it to an audience that maybe doesn't know anything about simulation, maybe doesn't know anything about statistics. So how do we communicate effectively through, say, written reports and presentations? So that's kind of what we test you on. That's the difference between a learning outcome and an objective. As you've seen on Canvas, course is divided up into these units, some intro units, when we talk about whatever the heck discrete event systems are and how to simulate them. We talk about other simulation types, and then we start getting into the more quantitative things of, okay, so how do we use probability to build simulations? And then once we know how to use probability to build simulations, how do we use a computer, which is a deterministic device? Computers are not random. How do we use a computer to approximate the randomness we need in our probabilistic modeling? So that's all before the midterm. Then we take a midterm over all of that stuff. And I do these retakes. And so basically you'll take the midterm and you get about a week, and you'll take, if you want, another test. You don't have to take it. That test will be very similar in length, in difficulty, and in content to the first midterm, but have totally different questions. You don't have to take the first midterm. You can only take the second. You don't have to take the second midterm. You can only take the first. You can take both. You will get the highest score of the two. So, and then as we'll, imagine testing is going to be a little bit different this semester. So they will be doing these tests via an online format. And so that might seem weird. And so part of this retake opportunity allows you to kind of get used to the test maybe the first time around. And then a week later, when you're more comfortable with it, if you'd like, you can come back and retake it. So there's that retake opportunity. And we also have that for the final exam. After the midterm, we come back. Now we know how to build simulation models. We start really doing interesting things with them. So we start getting data-driven. We start trying to make our simulations more realistic, and we start trying to speed up how they run on the computer. And so that's when we start talking about this input modeling. How do we properly model the world? How do we verify that our simulations work and validate that they work in a way that gives us insights about the real world? Then we're going to start using statistics to analyze that. So we're going to do a little bit of a review. Do you remember what a t-test is? Do you remember what an ANOVA is? Do you remember what linear regression is? We'll do some reviews of that and start to apply them to these real world problems. So hopefully we'll shore up the way you feel about statistics. So statistics may not seem so abstract. And then once we've got those statistics, we'll use them to start doing performance evaluation of our sims. And then we'll start figuring out then how to also use statistics to come up with novel ways to run our simulations so that we don't need to run as many of them. So those of you who are interested in like design of experiments, you may have heard of that, DOE or DOX. We apply those to simulations to sort of say that, you know what, I might think I need 100 replications of a simulation in order to get a meaningful result. But if I design my experiment in just the right way, I only need 15 replications of that experiment. So, and then after all of that, then we have a final exam that is cumulative, but of course, expect that it's going to have a lot of bias on the back end of the semester. But of course, the back end of the semester uses stuff from the front end of the semester, so it's still cumulative. But then that final there, that final will be given during the last week of classes, so it'll be in 75 minutes. And then that allows us to do the retake just like the midterm, but we'll do the retake during finals week. You can take one, you can take both. It doesn't matter, we'll take the highest score. The retake is not identical to the original one, but it's gonna be similar in length, similar in difficulty, similar in content, just different set of questions. Okay, let's see. Labs are meant to complement all of that. So we've got these 10 labs starting next week with lab 1. So you can see the units that each lab is associated with. So you can also find them either in Canvas under the labs module or under these modules. Under unit A, you'll find the lab 1. And so these labs, again, all of the materials you need to complete these labs have already been posted online on Canvas. So you can feel free to complete them kind of at your own pace. They have due dates, but you can start them early. So you can feel free to do that. We give you some time in the back end of the semester where there'll be a lab time where you'll be able to, we'll talk about how the final project might be modified due to its times of COVID, but there's a final project that you do that we give you some time in lab to work on both here and closer to when the project is due. All right. So any questions about the basic content layout of the course before we go on to required materials? Thanks again for all your patience with this, as we're all of us instructors, or some of us doing this for the first time, some of us just trying to remember how we did it back in the spring. All right, great. Okay, so what do you need for this? So coming into it, hopefully you feel comfortable with programming, but you now don't have to be an expert in C# or C++ or Java or anything like that. The languages that we use will be probably different than some of that you've seen, aside from maybe the spreadsheet language. But the basic ideas of what is a loop, what is a logical statement, those sorts of things are what you'll end up needing. If you can follow a flow chart, you're probably in pretty good shape with respect to programming. In terms of probability and statistics, like I've mentioned, we're going to use probability and statistics. And so the more you feel comfortable with out of 380 and 385, the better. But I will do review of the concepts we need. So these are distributions that you may have seen or may not have seen. These are how they're used. These are statistical tests that you may remember or may not. This is roughly where they come from and why we use them. So that's kind of the content background. What you'll need during it, because this lab has got and this is just the way simulation courses go in industrial engineering, is that you typically have at the undergrad level, you put both the simulation theory and the applied simulation together. And that's why you've got this lab component. And so we have a textbook that the lectures will relate to. And so that is a textbook that you'll need for readings that complement the lectures, as well as some of the homework assignments will refer to that. So having access to the Banks book here, also call it Banks et al. Or the Banks book. And then in the labs experiences often build upon exercises out of the Kelton et al. Book on simulation with Arena. In both of these cases, really any edition of the book will do. So if you can find an older edition of the simulation book, if you have a friend who happens to have an electronic version or something like that, then that will be fine. But you do need access to these things in order to you won't need, for the labs, you won't start working with Arena until I think it's like lab 5. So you're not going to need this book for the labs for a while. It would be a good idea to work on getting access to the Banks book though, because that is related more closely to the lecture material and the homeworks and such. So notice that each lecture on Canvas has got these little square bracketed things after it, which tells you the chapter that it relates to in the Banks book. I am expecting that students will have at least perused these chapters before the corresponding lecture, so that if I were to turn to you and say, ask a question about the material, that there would be some folks out there that that would remember that they've seen some of this stuff as they were moving through that ahead of time. So if you really want to take a proactive stance, then I definitely think keep up with your reading, and the reading is associated with these lectures here, and it comes out of the Banks book. Other materials, so these are highly recommended. I mentioned that a lot of the class makes use of this Arena simulation software from Rockwell Automation. That is a software platform that is available for free to download for students. It is a Windows program though, so it can be run in a virtual server if you have a Mac. It also is installed in our SIDC virtual labs. And so if you have a Mac or a Linux machine, you can use the ASU VPN to connect and then run Arena within from remote. So you'll be running it on a server machine and then displaying on your machine. It also is installed on the facilities. So if you are in the Brickyard, it's installed in the lab, the M111 lab, as well as the computer labs for SIDC students. So you can get access to Arena that way. So it's highly recommended if you can to get your own personal copy of Arena, but if you can't, then there are ways to which you can run Arena on ASU resources. Other resources related to Arena, there is every semester, the IISE runs a competition based on Arena, and you are free to enter that with final project group, and then that can take the place of your final project. And so that is an option that you are free to do. They provide you a prompt, they provide you data sets, and then you go off and run a simulation and submit your results to them, and then also submit deliverables to the class, and that would take the place of your final project. Otherwise, you don't have to do that, but that is just an option for your final project. And then there's additional videos that Arena has made available to help you do things, and then I've shown you that I've already provided some tutorials as well on the Canvas site. Then other recommended materials, so we will, at least at first, when we talk about Monte Carlo simulations and things like that, then having access to spreadsheets will be useful. So Microsoft Excel, which everybody gets through Office 365 as being an ASU student, Google Sheets, which is available through Google's apps for education. So those are available, and we don't use a lot of the features that really down into the weeds, but the basic idea of how do I do Monte Carlo sampling, or how do I do a discrete event system, a simple discrete event system simulation inside a spreadsheet, then those are definitely available. You might benefit from these other tools that, if you've used MATLAB before and you really like MATLAB, there's a lot in this class that you can do within MATLAB. I'm not going to require it. I might every once in a while mention, some like, here's how you would do this in MATLAB. But not required at all, just might be helpful. And then likewise, stats packages. So towards the end of the course, we'll be doing stats, relatively basic stats. Arena actually has stats facilities within it, but if you have competency in these other tools, then they may give you a leg up, and it may make it easier for you to do some of these analysis. It won't be as clunky as some of the things inside of Arena. Auxiliary materials, I already mentioned NetLogo. There's a lab that's based on NetLogo. It's a totally free download. It's available on all platforms, also installed on the SIDC machines. And then there's a number of other competing products to NetLogo as well as Arena. And so those of you who've taken internships, maybe the company that you worked at, when they used simulation, they used FlexSim, or they used Simio or Simulate. These are all very similar to Arena, and having exposure to them helps you figure out how to translate the stuff we learn in Arena into those, because there is a pretty easy translation to do. But if you don't have access to them, that's fine. But if you've seen them before and have access to them, I think it can complement you in learning how to use this stuff. All right, any questions about the required materials? All right, so here's how things are broken down. So again, I'm not taking attendance today, but normally we have these surveys that in the middle, and I'll show you what one of these looks like, but in the middle of the class, I'll throw up I won't vomit, I will put up on the screen a screen that basically has a link and a QR code that allows you to connect to it, connect to a Google form, and then put in an answer to a random question that I ask about the day's content. And so I might say, you know, what is, if I knew I had independent inter-arrival times between, you know, arrivals at a classroom, you know, what distribution would be the best that you use for that? And then you would go and you'd open that up and you'd put in exponential, and then you would leave that up in a tab somewhere. And then if I asked any other questions that day, you would add to that. And then you'd hit submit at the end of class. And then I grade for coherency, so completion, not correctness. So as long as I see that everybody gave me an answer that made sense with that question, then you get, you know, attendance credit for that day. That's 5% of your grade, and then there's a pretty healthy drop policy. So I know sometimes, you know, you might forget to do these, or you just can't come to class or whatever. And I think the current policy, and check the syllabus, is you drop 5 of these at the end of the semester, and they're actually dropped automatically on Canvas throughout the semester. There are these weekly Canvas assignments that are auto-graded, and they allow you to check your comprehension as we go. There is an extremely generous drop policy there. I think, you know, so there's, I think at most, there's like 15 of these Canvas activities, and you get to drop 7. So you could basically say that, you know what, I feel pretty good about this week's material, I'm not going to bother with it. And that's fine. That one will get dropped because you drop like half of that. And so, but these ones basically are based on the book content and the lecture content, and they help kind of guide your reading and make sure that the stuff that you're supposed to learn from past lecture has been retained. There are a couple, not many, of homework assignments. Each one will be about 2 questions long. Each question will require a little more work than an online Canvas assignment. So you may have to do some math, for example. Those assignments will then be manually graded by a grader, and so it's kind of the old-fashioned homework assignments. I mentioned that there's a midterm. It's about mid-semester. There is a retake opportunity, closed book, closed notes, but I do give you formula sheets. Same thing with the final exam. Closed book, closed notes, again, formula sheets. The final exam will be the same length of a midterm because the retake forces me to give the first final exam during a class period. So the final exam, it was designed to be able to be completed in 75 minutes as opposed to whatever the 110. Then there's a final project, which I'll talk about next, and these lab assignments. So the final project, and then I'll ask for questions after this. So this is the an opportunity to work with a group. Now, we have to make, you know, things are a little weird this semester, and so we will make some adjustments to, you know, what are the requirements on what constitutes a group and things like that. But the nominal structure here is that we have this project where you'll model a real world system using simulation, using real world data. And so you'll form your group, your group will decide on a system, and you'll end up submitting this input modeling report, which doubles as a proposal for what you want to study. And you then outline what data you could get and what that data might look like in order to get that model right. And then you'll submit a group presentation as a video that you upload online. And then you as an individual will then be randomly assigned 1 video to watch to do a peer review based on a rubric and to provide comments. You also, your group uploads a project report. It's a 4-page report you upload online to Canvas. And then you as an individual are then assigned a random report to do a peer review. You're given a rubric and asked some comments about that. So you get to see what reports look like on both sides of things. Your reviews are submitted anonymously. So the person who wrote the report or the presentation will be able to see the reviews, but they'll be anonymous. I will be able to see all of the reviews and all of the reports and all of the presentations. And my grades that I give to the presentations and to the reports will be in part based on my view of the presentations and reports, but also in part based on the aggregate peer review. So it's an opportunity for you to take place or to evaluate and celebrate what everyone else has done. And so we do the peer reviews so that for one, I think they're more useful pedagogically, but I also, it prevents us from having to do in-person presentations, which is very complicated in the current world here. And then I also think it's a little less anxious to present a video as opposed to being presenting live. So are there any questions about the structure here? What's required, how things are broken up, how things are weighted? All right, just to make sure that everybody has not fallen off there, could somebody just put into the chat where you are right now? I'm just kind of interested geographically where everybody is. Just put it into the chat. Oh, Brazil, that's cool. A lot of people in Tempe, greater metro, the Phoenix area. So, oh, California, Saudi Arabia. Well, yeah, so a couple different time zones. That's exciting. Texas, okay. All right, great. All right, well, that's it's cool to see such a diverse set of space. I mean, of course, expected a lot around Phoenix, but especially to seeing things not only across the globe, but even in the domestic United States. That's great. All right, thanks for listening. So assignment. So the other thing that I want to notice, you'll notice the homeworks have these funny names. So a homework B1, and then the Canvas activities have these other names, ICA A2. The lectures, as hopefully you've picked up, are named by the unit they're in and the sequence within that lecture. So lecture B1, that is the first lecture given in unit B. Homework B1, that B1 means that it will be assigned officially. It may be available well before that, but it'll be officially assigned during the lecture that it is named for. And so homework B1 is meant to say, after you've gotten all the content from lecture B1, you now have the ability to go off and do homework B1. So that's how those are named. Canvas activities are flipped from that. So the Canvas activities are meant to help prepare you for an upcoming lecture. So ICA A2, that is meant to be the Canvas activity that makes sure that you have comprehension of all the material you need before going in to lecture A2. So I actually think we do have Canvas activity A2, which was lecture A2 will be Thursday of next week. So there is a short Canvas activity that's just basically going over some intro stuff that you can complete on Canvas, and then that will be due on the lecture that shares its identifier before that lecture, actually just before that lecture. And so if you see that lecture A2 is coming up and there's a Canvas activity named A2 before the lecture, make sure you go and complete that activity on Canvas. Whereas on the other hand, if you see a homework that's named after a lecture, you don't technically have to worry about that homework until after the lecture. Hopefully that makes sense. Late policies, homeworks have a late policy. Otherwise, lab reports and the final project can't be turned in late. There are drop policies for, I think actually we have a drop policy for the labs as well. I think it's the 2-lab drop policy. So the drop policies on the other assignments basically make it so that we don't have late policies on them. There is not a drop policy on the homework, which is why I've got this 20% per day late policy there. If you have an excused absence, religious, for example, or university sanctioned or military, now is the time to let me know that. So at the beginning of the semester is the time to let me know if you know well ahead of time. If you have a medical absence that comes up, then if you can let me know ahead of time, you know, doctor's appointment or something like that, that's great. If not, then you have to let me know as soon as you're well. And so I don't want people saying, oh, you know, I missed that attendance point you know, a month ago because I had a doctor's appointment and it took me, you know, I was not able to access the lectures for the 24 hours. I couldn't even watch them asynchronously. You know, to me, I'd say, well, if you were able to attend classes a week after that, then you were able to tell me then. So to let me know ahead of time when you can. If it's a medical thing, then let me know as soon as you're well. Grade correction policies. So this is an important one. stuff gets graded, it gets returned to you. Once it gets returned to you, you've got a week to review it. And if you think that there was something was graded incorrectly, let me or, oh, I'm sorry, I just saw in the chat. I will get to that in a second. If there's a correction that needs to be made, then then we can review that, but you have to get us back to us within a week. So again, I don't want the last week of the semester to be the time when people go looking for all their grade corrections. And so you get it back, you get a week, and then after that, then I may not be able to review it because I can't review everything at the end of the semester. We kind of got to review it as things get returned. There was a question, sorry that I missed that when it popped up. So if any of those are late, we will not receive scores from it. So something without a late policy means they have to turned in late without an acceptable excused absence, then you have to lean on the drop policy. So like you get 2 labs dropped and you were planning on turning in a lab and you turn a lab in late, then there's no late policy on that. It's just easier for us to apply the drop policy in those cases. In the homeworks, because there's so few homeworks, I didn't want to apply drop policy. So the homeworks have got the deductions, but in the case of these things, then we got to lean on the drop policy. Having said that, it's a weird semester. I'm going to be flexible. I don't want to advertise to that flexibility to the point of encouraging you to push the flexibility. But I get it. There's going to be weird things that happen. Some of you are probably at home right now. You've got your kids behind you. You've got your dogs barking. I know I've got all of that stuff too. We're all adults here. I just happen to be in this teaching role and you happen to be in the student role, but we're all peers. I get it. We got stuff that's going on. So don't fret too much. Just do your due diligence. I'm just telling you what the official policies are. These are policies that are the kind of the fallbacks, the backstops, the things that I have to lean on as a default. But I know there's going to be weird things that happen this semester that I haven't anticipated, and we can figure those things out as we go. So don't fret too much about it, but please do try to get things turned in on time. And if it looks like there's opportunities for me to extend deadlines for good reasons, I've done that in the past. I did that in the spring. So don't worry too much about it, but that's the official policy. Any other questions about the late policies and the grade correction policies? In the final project, it is really important to get your presentation and your reports in on time though, because of the peer review. And so basically you're going to submit those in the middle of the last week of classes, like the Wednesday of the last week of classes. And then from Wednesday to Saturday, that'll be your opportunity to peer review someone else's presentation and someone else's report. And so we want to make sure that people have time to peer review those. And so you need to get your stuff in so that it can be randomly assigned to someone to do the peer review. Okay, copyrighted course materials. So the videos we post, the materials online, everything that I distribute, video, digital, any form, is copyrighted material. You can create copies for yourself. You can do recordings for yourself. But of course, I've already posted, I'll post recordings myself on Canvas. But if you want to do that, sure, that's fine. But don't upload them anywhere. Don't sell them. If you take your own notes, of course, when you write it down, that's you hold the copyright on that. But it's actually against ASU's academic integrity policy to share your personal notes. So don't upload your notes to third-party websites or pass them around or anything like that. So it just, everything's protected, and so don't upload things to websites that ask you to do that. Unapproved collaboration, most assignments in this class are individual level assignments. That means I expect your submissions to be a reflection of your own understanding. So you can collaborate, you can't collaborate on answering a question. But of course, if you say like, I don't really remember how a t-test works. What is a t-test? Yeah, you can ask a student, to help for that. So about the general topics, I think it's great for the students within the class to work together. If you happen to be in a place where you can talk with each other outside of class or post things on the discussion boards or in the Slack, that's great. But you don't want to go to the point where someone is doing question 1 and someone else is doing question 2 and then you swap. That would be unauthorized or unapproved collaboration and is against academic integrity policy. So individual assignments means that it's your work 100%. It's not someone else's work that you borrowed. All right, so I mentioned the attendance exercises. So this is not one that's coming up, but during a normal lecture, you would see slides like these. So this is not an attendance. So this is our question slide. So back when I was just doing in person before COVID, then I would display a slide like this, and it would have this URL down at the bottom, this QR code. This would be a place for students to post questions electronically, even students sitting in the class, and it would go to an anonymous site that other students could view and then I could view, and you could vote up other people's questions and or post your own questions. And then if I could, I would monitor that during the lecture so that I could answer questions as they came up, maybe from students who didn't want to raise their hand. So that's how I did that here. Because we have the chat and I'm monitoring so many windows right now, it may be harder for me to pay attention to this, but I'm still making it available because all the lecture slides have got these interspersed into them already. And so I want to make sure people know that that resource is there. I might end up actually turning off that link if everybody ends up using the chat very much for their questions, because that ends up serving a lot of the same purpose as this did back when it was totally in person. So that's what's up with this question slide, the QR code and that URL there. The attendance slide looks similar. And so again, these are baked into all of the lectures. And so at times during the lectures, then I ask a random question based on the content of the lecture so far. And some of these I'll skip. Some of them I'll say, oh, I don't want to do an attendance exercise right now, and I'll go through it. But the opportunities for them are already kind of put in the lectures at different points. And so the way this would work if we were in class is you've got the QR code option. You can use your phones. You can type in the URL, and I may end up pasting the URL into the chats anyways to make it easier. And if we were in person, there was a paper-based option, but for this semester, probably not going to worry about the paper-based option, especially given that you have 24 hours after the videos are posted to submit your attendance exercises. So you can watch the videos at home, and then you can answer those things. Again, they're not graded for correctness, they're just graded for completion. So in fact, it's more useful to me to see what your gut answer to a question is. As long as it's a real answer, even if it's wrong, it really helps me to see how well things are being received. So that's what these things look like. That's how attendance is taken care of. All right, so that's all the major stuff. Check the syllabus for all of the other details. For example, Title IX stuff. If you witness some abuse or a subject of some abuse and you bring it to me, I have to remind you that I'm a mandated reporter, which means I have to report it up. At the university does have others who you can report things to in confidentiality. All that is covered on the syllabus. And I can help you find those people as well. Where to go next? This is the last slide. Complete all of the Unit 0 activities with a perfect score that will unlock the rest of this course. Start reading Chapter 1 of the Banks book and look for the first ICA assignment, which is posted, which is going to be sort of due on Thursday. And so it's just a short Canvas assignment, just over this kind of introductory stuff, just to kind of get you used to submitting these Canvas assignments. And again, there's like a 7 out of 15 drop policy on these Canvas assignments. And then Lab 1 is also available. So that's an introductory lab that just goes over some of the stuff that we'll start talking about next week. So it is, I think, currently available, or will be available when you unlock the course, and it'll be due basically roughly a week after. So it won't be due next week, it'll be due the week after that. So all of that, those dates and due deadlines and everything was on Canvas. And I'll be kind of adjusting those and making sure that they're that when we imported from the previous semester, that all the dates got lined up right. So any other questions or anything? So we are at the end of this hour here. I know it's been boring, I'm sure, but I want to make sure we cover all those policies and give you an opportunity to ask anything that's you know, about modulation having to do with this whole COVID scenario. Oh, I didn't mention, and maybe I should just, maybe this is what I'll do real quick, is there is a separate lecture 0B, which I think I've covered everything in it already, but it's got the COVID specific stuff in it. And I've mentioned that the midterm exams, the final exams, those are probably going to be online, probably using an online proctoring solution like Respondus, lockdown browser with camera. So there will probably be a small kind of free credit assignment that you'll have to do a week before the midterm, just demonstrating that you can get Respondus installed and working. And that will be like automatically give you a 0.5% or something on the midterm. So the final project, so I'll mention kind of the concessions to that. Labs, I don't think we need to make really many changes having to do with COVID for these labs, because most of the labs have been made so that you can do them outside of the classroom. But if you need to come into the classroom, I've mentioned the TA is going to make himself available during the classroom times. Lecture attendance, just as a reminder, again, you can do these asynchronously. You've got 24 hours after the videos, just breezing by these because I already covered this. Again, that's what the attendance looks like. You'll just look for these in the asynchronous videos. Final project, although we normally ask for 4 people, I recognize that might be hard for this. There are logistical reasons with why we did 4 people that had to do with everyone having to present in class. We needed to keep the number of groups lower. That isn't as much of a problem now because we're uploading videos online and doing the peer review. I am willing to entertain smaller groups. I might even be willing to entertain, and if you can justify it, doing the project alone, if that's what you prefer, and it's just going to be really difficult for you to find someone in a compatible time zone, etc. So we'll make things work with respect to group sizes. Traditionally, the project, and there are no attendance questions today. So if you're sick of me, you can just log off. So traditionally the project requires field work to gather data. I don't want to force any of you into uncomfortable situations. So we're going to be flexible. And so it would be great if you found novel ways to gather that data. So for example, if you go to earthcam.com and a bunch of others, you can find webcam data from cities that are like live webcam data, recorded webcam data. And you can say, you know what? This is looking at a particular system, a subway, a coffee shop that I would like to optimize, but I'm going to use data from that system. I will parameterize my simulation model using data that I can observe from that webcam. That's fine. You'll be a little limited in what views you can have available, but that is something that I think would be really cool. Alternatively, I think it's fine for this class to say that, well, normally we would have a data-driven project, but instead, because we can't go out and gather the data, we are going to search for other resources, say on Google, that allow us to help justify parameter choices we make. And so I may not be able to actually measure how many people go into a coffee shop at particular Dutch Bros or something like that. But if I look online and I see how much business they say they do on a weekday, I can kind of do an estimate of that, and I will use that to parameterize my simulation model. So you can make those arguments. And so we'll be flexible in the final project. The nominal requirements are 4-person groups that go out and gather data from the real world. In reality, this semester, we're going to be more like an up to 4, preferably 4, maybe 3, and then if you absolutely have to, 2, and even possibly 1. So we may have to justify these things on a group by group basis, so we can be flexible there. And if you can get real data, that is awesome. Otherwise, if you can't get real data, you're still going to practice with real data in one of the labs that's towards the end of the semester, where I give you a bunch of real data and you have to fit it to distributions and things like that. So you'll get the practice for that. You just won't necessarily practice it for your final project, because I don't want to put you into a situation where you have to gather these data in an uncomfortable way. Exams, I already mentioned the makeup exams, mentioned the Respondus lockdown browser, mentioned the 75-minute time window, and again, labs should be pretty cut and dry. Just in general, if anything, just keep an open line of communication to me, and let me know how things are going. Let me know what you need. We can be flexible. We can play things by ear. I told you the most I can about the basic course policies, but of course we can flex those policies. I just want you guys to be safe. I want you guys to enjoy the class. I want you to feel like you got something out of it. I don't want you to feel like this is a consolation prize for the normal class. I think we can still be very effective at achieving those learning outcomes. We just have to be flexible in how we do it. So with that, that's all I've got for you today. Are there any other questions or comments, concerns? Again, no attendance questions today. And this recording will get posted to Canvas as well, although I missed the first, 5-10 minutes. All right, so I will hang around here for a couple of minutes. And those of you that are done, feel free to log off. And stay safe, be well. Looking forward to the technical content starting on Tuesday. Make sure to do Unit 0 and start reading Chapter 1 and look at that ICAA 2. Thanks for your patience and thanks for attending.
Thank you, Professor.
Looks like everybody's going, bye all. Okay. All right, there's just about 5 others still in the room. I'm assuming that maybe people walked away. If there's any other questions? If not, I'll be ending the session very soon here. All right, see everybody next week.